Welcome to this lecture on rational choice theory. So after the phenomenological theory, this is second kind of micro theory that developed in the 20th century, at least under this name, in reaction to the Parsonian macro sociology. And in this lecture, I would first like to introduce some of the basic assumptions of rational choice theory, which is really one of the thriving fields also in sociology. Probably next to and even in opposition to cultural sociology. In Germany, for instance, the rational choice sociologists even separated from the main sociological association in opposition actually to the perceived cultural mainstream. In the second step, I would like to introduce a little bit of game theory, which is more practiced in economics, but also has its applications in sociology and is an extension of rational choice theory into the realm of social interaction, so modeling social interaction. And I will conclude the session also with some critical comments on a rational choice theory. So before we start, I think it is important to keep a couple of distinctions in mind that I had already touched upon in the lectures on the philosophy of the social sciences. So when we talk about a rational choice or any kind of individualist decision theory, there are three levels, I think, that we can speak about this theory. The first one is there is an individualist kind of theory competes with other theories in like the explanatory domain, where individualist theories usually defend the methodological individualism, which is about the level of explanation a theory deems to be the best, and in this particular case, lower level kind of explanations are usually seen as the primary and most important one, or perhaps even the only explanations in town. And this is opposed then to a kind of methodological holism, where non-individual entities are the primary unit or level at which explanations take place. Then a related concept in this explanatory debate is mentalism, where, and this also holds for rational choice theory, mental states or sort of inner mental states, right? So intentions, beliefs, emotions are seen as the most important element used in order to explain human action. Yeah? And when you think about Durkheim's opposition against psychological explanations, then this is a non-mentalist kind of position that mentalism here would argue against. Yeah? An additional assumption about these mental states that rational choice makes most famously is that it presupposes not any kind of actor or mental states, but it presupposes these instrumentally rational actors that pursue also their self-interests. Yeah. This is the explanatory level and should be distinguished from the normative level on which rational choice or individual decision theory also makes certain assumptions. And it is goes to the credit of Charles Taylor, the Canadian philosopher, in this cross purposes article to make this important distinction. And here in the normative debate, individualism is not about which kind of methodological take is the best, but it is really an ethical debate about individualist sort of values being more, or rights being more important or priming over collective ones. And here the sort of opposed position to individualism in the second normative sense is rather let's say, totalitarianism, if you want to, sort of devalue your opponent, as Karl Popper, for instance, does in his famous book here about the open society and its enemies. You may also call it simply ethical collectivism or ethical holism, which is the position that there are at least some instances, or perhaps even all instances, this is a stronger version, where collective rights prime over individual rights. Yeah. So yeah, perhaps one word also about Karl Popper in this book. He is known obviously as the grandfather of Red Vienna positivism, including in the social sciences, where he had a very strong influence. And his book needs to be read also as a, let's say, polemical book in which he constructs a certain, let's say, narrative in which any kind also of methodological or ontological non-individualism, right? Think about Durkheim, Marx, and Hegel, they figure in this book, are simultaneously, according to Popper, also normatively against individualism. Yeah, so that the moment that you start explaining the social world in terms of non-individualist entities is also the moment when you start being in favor of Stalinism and fascism, right, to put it bluntly. And I think that this entire slide here, and also the works by Philip Pettit and Charles Taylor, are important to really separate these different debates, because they are about different issues. And this also includes the more ontological debates, right? We saw this in one of the first lectures, where individualism is not opposed to a methodological kind of collectivism or a normative kind of collectivism, but to an ontological kind. And here the main question that organizes this debate is whether there are individuals and actions who are determined by social laws. This would be the collectivist position or not, and this would be the individualist position. And this is a different ontological debate, according to Philip Pettit, as that, or then the debate here between atomism and holism. This is more of the Durkheimian also debate of whether there is whether mental states are socially constituted or not, right? Where then in a George Herbert Mead, for instance, tradition, but we also saw this in the phenomenological tradition most clearly, mental states are socially constituted. There is no such thing, for instance, as personhood in like a lonely sort of Robinson Crusoe kind of world. And this is then different from a position where mental states are completely independent of the social world, and that would be the atomist position. And last but not least, third kind of ontological debate that may also be distinguished from the previous ones is the one between singularism and non-singularism or pluralism, and we will encounter this more today. And here, the main issue in this debate is whether you, as a singularist, think that there are no sort of plural subjects, there are no sort of group actors that we can ascribe real intentional states to, such as beliefs, intentions, emotions again, or whether as a pluralist you think that there are group actors, right? So it's not just a way of speaking, a façon de parler, to say that the soccer team won that a nation wages war against another nation, that a corporation committed fraud, and may be held responsible even in court for this, so collective responsibility. So all of this would be something the pluralist in this debate would defend. And yes, perhaps no big surprise here, the individualist decision theory, rational choice, in these, it's almost then here 6 different debates, is usually situated here in the first kind of position, right? The atomism, singularism, individualism, etc. So this is basically where it is anchored, even though this does not need to be the case logically. So these are independent debates, and there are also rational choices who would go, for instance, in a normative debate for a more, let's say, non-individualist position. And we will also see why this may be the case in the course of this lecture. Yeah. So rational choice, a little bit of historical background. I think I mentioned this a little bit already in the last lecture, where we ended also with a rational choice-based institutionalism. So rational choice is a term of the 20th century, but the basic idea to explain economic action in particular with the help of this, I would say, fiction of the Homo economicus, or the rationally calculating human being pursuing his or her own sort of self-interests, is something that goes back to the so-called marginal revolution in economics that is associated with Menger, the German economist, and Léon Walras, the French, Swiss-French economist. And they basically were the ones who, in that methodological dispute, were on the one economics side against the German historical school. So recall, the German historical school was in favor of a non-nomothetic, right, an ideographic approach, also in favor of describing the social world not through law-like regularities, but taking the singularity of social phenomena seriously. And the economists in the marginal revolution were in opposition of this view, and they thought there are laws also in the social world, and the sort of law that individuals act rationally in pursuit of their self-interest is one of the most important in order to make sense of then the social world. This is also called marginal revolution because Menger, Jevons, and others had introduced the marginalist thinking from mathematics into economics at the time. This is an important development also in the discipline of economics. But this was all in the 19th century. Was the first step in developing then the later formalized ideal language theory of decision making. So we are talking again about an ideal language kind of theory that has also been mathematically formalized in the 1930s, late 30s, with Paul Samuelson. The economics discipline imported mathematics for real, and then after the Second World War, in particular, rational choice also became the standard in economics, and then, as we will see soon, also in the neighboring sciences of political science and sociology. So the basic idea of this rational choice theory is it's a decision theory, right? It's about how we make decisions, and we, the decision maker in that model, can be any kind of subject that has actorhood and basically decision-making capacity of some kind. So